The first formal complaint against Larry Nassar was filed in 1997. Michigan State University received it. No action was taken. Over the next 2 decades, more complaints arrived from athletes, from parents, from a university trainer, from officials at USA Gymnastics, from investigators who were told the case was too complicated to pursue. By the time Nassar was arrested in 2016, more than 500 women and girls had been sexually abused. He had been the team doctor for USA Gymnastics for nearly 30 years and a faculty member at Michigan State for the same period. Every report had been received. Every report had been filed. The record existed in black and white, emails, memos, interview notes, and for 20 years the system protected him instead of the children in its care. Lawrence Gerard Nassar built a career on professional reputation and institutional trust. An osteopathic physician by training, he became one of American sports medicine's most visible figures, a team physician for USA Gymnastics, a faculty member at a major public university, a clinician who treated Olympians and attended world championships. Coaches and administrators described him as dedicated. Parents saw him as an expert when their daughters needed care. That trust bought him access. He saw athletes in private rooms and locker rooms on training floors, often when the athlete was still a child. That access was total and unquestioned, and he used it to abuse them. Nassar's method was anchored in a technical term, an internal pelvic adjustment. As a legitimate osteopathic technique, such a procedure has a place in medical practice when performed by credentialed practitioners under transparent, consensual circumstances. What made Nassar's actions abusive was not the existence of a technique, but its context and application. He performed internal manipulations without adequate explanation, without chaperones, often on minors who could not provide informed consent. He positioned patients and draped parents in ways that obscured what he was doing. When athletes or parents raised concerns, they were told the procedure was medically necessary or that they lacked the clinical understanding to judge. The technique itself was real. Its use on children, in secrecy and coercion, was criminal. The first documented university complaint in 1997 encapsulates the institutional failure that allowed the abuse to continue. A Michigan State student reported that Nassar had abused her under the pretense of treatment. The university reviewed the complaint and consulted another physician who described the technique as legitimate. The complaint was dismissed. No disciplinary action followed. No referral was made to outside agencies. Nassar remained on the field and in the clinic, continuing to see patients, including children. That initial dismissal established a pattern. Subsequent complaints entered a system that had already concluded there was no wrongdoing. Over the next 19 years, each report encountered the same structural inertia. Reports to USA Gymnastics followed similar patterns of delay and deflection. In 2015, 3 athletes reported abuse to the organization. USA Gymnastics did not immediately contact law enforcement, did not suspend Nassar, and did not alert Michigan State. Instead, the organization retained an outside law firm to conduct an internal review. That process moved at a pace that allowed Nassar to continue treating athletes, including at the 2016 U.S. Olympic gymnastics trials, while questions about his conduct were supposed to be investigated. The first report to FBI officials arrived in July 2015, but the FBI's Indianapolis field office did not open a formal investigation for nearly a year. During that window of delay, more victims were harmed. The pattern was not the result of a single missed opportunity. It was an accumulation of institutional choices that deferred accountability in favor of reputation management. The criminal case that followed began in earnest in September 2016. A complaint to Michigan State University police prompted a search of Nassar's home, where investigators found approximately 40,000 images and videos of child sexual abuse material. He was arrested and charged. After his arrest, the number of women and girls willing to come forward escalated rapidly, from dozens to hundreds. The scale of the abuse and the breadth of institutional knowledge about it became visible in public records and testimony. Victims' accounts spanned decades, the youngest reported being treated by Nassar at age 6. The arrest transformed private trauma into public evidence and exposed the systemic lapses that had allowed abuse to continue. Sentencing exposed the human consequences of those systemic failures in a courtroom that became a conduit for survivor testimony. In January 2018, Ingham County Circuit Court Judge Rosemaria Qualaline presided over victim impact statements. For 7 days, 156 women and girls and some of their parents addressed the court, each statement a precise, sometimes harrowing description of what Nassar had done and what followed when they tried to report it. They spoke of confusion, of being dismissed by coaches and officials, of the cost in mental and physical health and lost time. Judge Aquilina sentenced Nassar to 40 to 175 years in state prison for criminal sexual conduct and said plainly, "I just signed your death warrant." He had already received a separate federal sentence of 60 years for possession of child pornography. Nassar will die in prison. Institutional accountability arrived, but rarely in criminal form. Michigan State University reached a settlement with survivors for $500 million at the time, the largest sexual abuse settlement in higher education history. USA Gymnastics was effectively dismantled and reorganized under federal oversight. The U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee faced congressional scrutiny. Officials resigned or were forced out. Luana Simon, Michigan State's president, resigned and later faced criminal charges tied to her handling of complaints. Those charges were eventually dismissed. Many of the individuals who received and then minimized or ignored reports were not criminally charged. The institutions paid financially and reputationally. The individuals who made those decisions largely did not face equivalent legal consequences. The legacy of the Nassar case produced policy changes that altered the landscape of American Olympic sport, even as those reforms stood as an imperfect response to decades of harm. The United States Center for Safe Sport, an independent body created to investigate and adjudicate abuse allegations in Olympic sports, assumed responsibilities intended to remove conflict of interest protections that previously allowed national governing bodies to police themselves. Congress passed the Protecting Young Victims from Sexual Abuse and Safe Sport Authorization Act in 2017, creating mandatory reporting requirements for adults within amateur athletic organizations. Those reforms are substantive. They change reporting obligations, create mechanisms for independent inquiry, yet the law and the organizations created in its wake were not in place in time to stop Nassar. The reforms are a response to failure, and they represent what survivors and the public demanded after the system collapsed. Structural change to prevent the same sequence of choices from repeating. The human cost of institutional failure is specific and lasting. 500+ survivors carried the consequences into adulthood, injuries that were minimized as treatment, psychological trauma compounded by disbelief, careers rerouted or ended, relationships strained by secrecy and shame. They returned to courts and newsrooms and congressional hearings, not to relive pain, but to force institutions to account for choices made in private offices and meeting rooms. Their testimonies converted administrative memos and dismissed complaints into a narrative that could not be ignored. What changed was less the presence of wrongdoing that had long been documented than the public's awareness of how power, deference to professional authority, and organizational self-protection allowed it to continue. More than 500 women and girls. First complaint, 1997. Arrest, 2016. 20 years in which every institution that received a report made a choice to investigate internally, to consult lawyers, to protect reputations, to defer to the medical authority wielded by the accused. The choice to protect athletes was not the priority. Larry Nassar will die in federal prison. Institutions paid settlements. Many officials who enabled him moved on. The survivors did not move on. They demanded that the record be made public, that those records be changed, that the systems meant to safeguard children be reoriented toward prevention and accountability. Their testimony and collective action produced the policy changes now in place, reforms bought in the starkest terms with their suffering. Subscribe to Case Files TV, because when an institution receives the first report and does nothing, every abuse that follows is part of that decision.